interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually, you're right, the name raises questions, and certainly there's been some much covered internal politics on that show, but I do think that, you know, there is space. Even that show does have space. When Whoopi said what she said, there was quick pushback from other panelists. They were like, oh, I don't know. Actually, I think that might not be right. That's it.
Yeah, I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, I mean person who menstruates. You're the teachers' union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke.
Sunny Hostin has been making some pretty outrageous woke takes, which have finally landed squarely on Bill Maher's radar. And the blunt comedian didn't let them slide, showing zero patience for sanctimony or outrage on daytime TV. On multiple episodes of Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher torched Hostin and the View panelists for their rhetoric, which clearly rattled them. As always, hit the subscribe button, and let's dive.
But it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word.
Into this. So, Sunny Hostin clearly thought she had Bill Maher cornered, pressing him on why he seemed to be echoing the right by embracing and criticizing the term woke. After all, Maher had long identified with the left. In her mind, this was a gotcha moment, a clean setup. But Maher didn't flinch. Instead, he flipped the script. He calmly explained that while woke may have originated as a meaningful rallying cry within the black community, it hasn't stayed there. According to him, it's been stretched, twisted, and repackaged into a vehicle for increasingly absurd ideas and overreaching policies that alienate everyday people. You could almost see the shift in the room. Hostin looked caught off guard. This wasn't the response she had lined up for. And just when it seemed like the moment might pass, Maher leaned in further, setting up a follow-up point that landed.
But don't tell me the left had...
Maybe the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a joke. But,
too dark.
Well, maybe it is, but it's true. I mean, if I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me up pretty quick.
It even harder than the first, leaving the panel visibly rattled. Bill Maher then pivots, laying out how dramatically the left has evolved over the past decade. No longer the same coalition it once was, but something sharper, more rigid, and, in his view, increasingly out of touch. All the while, Sunny Hostin keeps prodding him, clearly hoping he'll redirect that fire toward the right. But Maher doesn't bite. He's not interested in the easy applause line. Instead, he zeroes in on what he sees as a deep ideological shift within his own side. And that's where the tension spikes. You can sense the discomfort creeping in because this isn't the script Hostin expected. The critique is landing a little too close to home. After all, she's often been one of the most vocal proponents of those very woke ideals, something viewers have seen time and again in countless viral clips.
Someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses. We know they are stupid, just don't say it.
And now, with Maher calling it out in real time, the conversation turns from confident sparring to something far more uneasy and revealing. And that's where things get especially interesting. Right from the opening moments of the clip, Bill Maher subtly frames Sunny Hostin and the View panel as drifting into far-left territory, essentially another way of saying woke, though he never needs to spell it out. The implication is clear, and it lands. This comes on the heels of repeated moments where hosts on The View criticized voters who supported Donald Trump, at times dismissing them as uninformed or outright foolish. But Maher pushes back against that narrative. He makes it clear he doesn't see those voters as stupid at all. In his view, many simply rejected what they perceived as overreaching policies and cultural messaging that didn't reflect their values. That's the line Maher draws.
I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, person who menstruates. You're the teachers union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke.
And it's a sharp one. Suddenly, the conversation shifts from casual criticism to a deeper, more uncomfortable reckoning about why people actually vote the way they do. Bill Maher then shifts gears and starts zeroing in on specific views that Sunny Hostin has pushed on The View. And this is where things get even more heated. One of the flashpoints he highlights is the show's strong stance on continued mask wearing during COVID-19. Even as public debate intensified over how effective those measures were in different settings, Hostin, alongside Whoopi Goldberg, had been vocal in encouraging strict adherence, framing it as a matter of responsibility and public safety. At one point, Goldberg even directly pushed back on Maher for criticizing prolonged mask use, turning the exchange into a tense on-air clash. Maher seizes on that moment to argue
About Whoopi Goldberg, because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, "Oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma." First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But they're thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. It just happened to coincide. But can I just say this? I had on last week Ira Glasser, former longtime head of the ACLU, talking about free speech. Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement.
that parts of the media were too quick to shut down dissenting opinions. What follows isn't just disagreement, it's a full-on collision of perspectives, with neither side willing to back down. Here, Bill Maher openly admits that Whoopi Goldberg has taken plenty of shots at him over the years, often tossing out what he considers wildly off-base claims, including her criticism of his stance on mask wearing. But Maher doesn't stop there. He points out that Goldberg herself has crossed lines before, most notably during the controversy that led to her suspension from The View after backlash over her remarks about the Holocaust. Despite their clashes, Maher actually defended her at the time, arguing that suspending her was excessive and ran counter to the principles of free speech. That's the twist. Even when he disagrees, he resists the urge to silence.
But isn't it interesting that it's called, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
There is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually, you're right, the name raises questions, and certainly there's been some much covered internal politics on that show, but I do think that, there is space. Even that show does have space. When Whoopi said what she said, there was quick pushback from other panelists. They were like, "Oh, I don't know. Actually, I think that might not be right." That's it.
And it raises an uncomfortable question. If the roles were reversed, would figures like Goldberg or Sunny Hostin show the same restraint, or would they celebrate his cancellation without hesitation? I doubt this woman actually watches The View because, if she did, she'd notice a clear pattern that's hard to ignore. The panel often presents itself as a space for diverse perspectives, but in practice, most of the hosts tend to circle around the same core viewpoint. The only real outlier in recent times has been Alyssa Farah Griffin, who occasionally pushes back and offers a different angle. Even then, her presence can feel more symbolic than substantive. The rest of the panel may differ in tone or delivery, but their arguments usually reinforce the same underlying narrative, creating more of a one-sided discussion than a genuine debate. That's why Griffin's role sometimes comes across as tokenistic, similar to how Scott Jennings is often positioned on CNN.
It wasn't 21st century that prevented a woman from being president. It was the Electoral College. Democrats run for office as if the voters don't